The UFC finally decided to give the fans a decent product with their last event of the entire year, Sean Strickland and Jared Cannonier being the main event. And this fight card is actually stacked. And I can't wait to see it, man. Because again, we've had a lot of shitty fight nights. We've had a lot of mediocre fight nights throughout the years. Not just throughout this year, but throughout the past few years, we've had plenty of mediocre fight nights. The UFC Apex being one of the reasons as to why the UFC has been putting on really lazy and lousy events. But they're going back to the Apex, and I'm not mad about it because this is a stacked fight night. And this is, in my opinion, what a fight night should look like. This is what the usual fight night should be, and we don't get them that often. The UFC, please make more of these cards because this is what the fans want. And I don't really mind that it's in the Apex because it's a good card. I just hate when they're going to the Apex to put on dog shit cards. Sean Strickland, Jared Cannonier, these aren't no women in the main event. And I'm pretty hyped for this fight. Sean Strickland, one of the best personalities in MMA. I want this guy to win, all right? I'm rooting for Sean Strickland to win. Given the fact that if Jared Cannonier beats up Sean Strickland, who's he going to fight next? Oh, do we want to see the Robert Whittaker rematch? Well, since Robert Whittaker and Jared Cannonier fought, Whittaker's improved a lot, right? And this was the Whittaker after he had already been champ, right? This is a few fights before the Adesanya rematch. Whittaker's looking like a world beater these days, and he's shown significant improvements since that fight. I don't really want to see a 38-year-old Jared Cannonier fight a, surging Robert Whittaker who just continues to get even better. It's almost as if he's defying like what you can do in reality. I mean, the guy just has a new prime. Like every few years, he's just getting better and better and better. He's not like a Max Holloway, Robert Whittaker, right? Who hits his prime in his late 20s, early 30s, and then starts to decline a little bit. Even though, to be fair, we haven't really gotten to see Max since the Volkanovski trilogy. Maybe he's still getting better. It's just Volk is that much better, which would be scary. But I'm going on a tangent. Jared Cannonier versus Whittaker, not interesting to me. Jared Cannonier and Adesanya, that fight put me to sleep. I don't want to see that in a million years. I don't want to see that fight, okay? So I want Sean Strickland to win this because I want to see him fight a Robert Whittaker. I want to see him fight a Israel Adesanya because I think Adesanya's best possible matchup that he can take before going into the Pereira rematch or a quadrilogy, because he's already been smoked 3 times, is Adesanya. There's going to be a great build-up. Both of these guys had a lot of shit talk at the UFC 276 press conference where Strickland called Adesanya out for being cringe, and that was a legendary press conference, and I want to see a little bit more of that. But if I'm going to be honest, guys, I think Adesanya would tear him a new asshole. To be honest, I think he'd tear him a new one. Let's be real. But it's entertaining because of the build-up. I just think that he would get torn up in that fight. But I think that Jared Cannonier is going to knock out Sean Strickland. I really do. That's my pick. I'm going to go with a Jared Cannonier. Everyone's been saying it, second or third round KO. Because if you look at Sean Strickland's wins, even his win over Jack Hermanson, which is probably his second best performance next to that win that he had over Uriah Hall, he's getting these wins over guys that are nowhere near the level of Jared Cannonier. And say what you want about Jared Cannonier, say that he fumbled the bag against Izzy, just like basically everyone else in that division. And he's lost to Robert Whittaker, but still made it relatively competitive against Whittaker and Izzy if you actually watch the fight. And if you're not just looking at the results, Jared Cannonier is actually pretty darn good. And for a middleweight, this guy is one of the best middleweights. He's consistently a top 5 middleweight, right? I mean, this is a guy that beat a lot of top guys. I mean, he's knocked out Jack Hermanson. He's beat Kelvin Gastelum. He's knocked Gastelum down on multiple different times. I mean, Gastelum, one of the best chins in the division, has only been knocked down by Izzy Adesanya in the 5th round, and that was an all-out war. And he's been knocked down by, of course, Jared Cannonier, right? I don't know if Whittaker knocked him down. I know Whittaker dominated him, but I don't remember if he knocked him down. But that's impressive. That's very impressive. And then he finished Brunson. People talk shit about Brunson all the time. They say he's got an ugly style, a sloppy style. But to actually go out there and do what you're supposed to do, I know, man, this is the UFC, right? when we're looking at fights, we often predict them. I think this is going to happen, and you can imagine what's going to go down in your head. And, the Darren Till-Dricus du Plessis fight, what actually went down is what I imagined in my head. But most of the time, what you're thinking is actually going to happen before the fight never happens. And Jared Cannonier did what he was supposed to do. But Derek Brunson's tough. He took Jared Cannonier down and beat him up for the first round. Jared Cannonier went out there and knocked him out. Put that takedown defense to work and actually knocked him out and did what he was supposed to do. Not many guys have actually done that to Derek Brunson. Derek Brunson beats up a lot of guys on the ground. And once that train gets rolling, it's hard to stop, and Jared Cannonier stopped the train, after the first round when he was actually taken down. He's a beast, what can I say? Sean Strickland, good grappler, great takedown defense, but I think a lot of people overrate him just because of that. Spars all the time. He's got pretty good head movement, but again, he still eats shots, right? And he's facing guys like Uriah Hall that are past their prime and washed. He's facing guys like Jack Hermanson that are just mediocre with pillow fists. And then, of course, he got chinned by Alex Pereira. He looked like he was walking around like a zombie right into Pereira, with his chin on a silver platter, basically serving himself to Pereira's left hand. And I don't think that Jared Cannonier is nearly on that level, but Jared Cannonier is probably the fourth best fighter in that division right now. I mean, who is his competition? I think Whitaker's better, Adesanya's better, Pereira's better. Who else are you going to give me? Roman Dolidze? What? He hasn't proved shit. He beat Jack Hermanson. You're not going to give me Roman Dolidze. You got to give me someone that's actually gone out and proved something. So Jared Cannonier, say what you want, 38 years old, didn't beat Izzy, didn't beat Whitaker, but he's still pretty damn good. I'd pick him to beat Paulo Costa. I'd pick him to beat, Marvin Vettori. He basically beats everyone in this division unless you're in that top three. So I think he's going to knock out Sean Strickland. He's a better technical striker. Sean Strickland doesn't check leg kicks, and Jared Cannonier has some really, really powerful and painful leg kicks. I mean, he was able to hurt Whitaker with the leg kicks, and, he was able to do some decent work on Adesanya with the leg kicks. He was able to slow Adesanya down a little bit towards the middle of that fight, which is why there wasn't a lot of action in the later rounds. But, Jared Cannonier, remember, this is a guy that snapped Anderson Silva's leg just by kicking it, right? He destroyed Silva and finished him just with a good, solid leg kick. And I think he's going to chew up the legs of Sean Strickland. And Sean Strickland, you can spar all day, but a fight is different. The 4-ounce gloves are different. And I know we've heard stories about Sean Strickland getting in the cage and sparring with a guy like Magomed Ankalaev. But to be fair, guys, right, this is sparring. And these are guys that may be trying to grapple with him, and they're not trying to take his head off. But in a real fight, he doesn't survive against these guys. And I think that Sean Strickland is actually, it's weird because he's decent, he's super tough, and he's really experienced, right? He has a lot of experience. And it's sometimes hard to navigate your way to be able to find his head when you're throwing punches. I'll give him that. But in order for him to have success, he's got to take you to a decision. Unless you're, a guy who's, in the beginning of his UFC career, like Brendan Allen when he took on Sean Strickland, and Sean Strickland has more experience and Brendan Allen doesn't have the best chin to begin with. Of course, but Jared Cannonier is a veteran. This guy's been doing it for a long time. And I think that he has the striking ability to be able to land on Strickland. And second best power in the division since Yoel Romero left. I mean, who else are we talking about? I'd throw Whitaker in my top 5, right? I'd throw maybe Costa the top 5, right? But not many guys are carrying the same power as Jared Cannonier. There's really only one, and that's Alex Pereira. Jared Cannonier is the second most powerful guy in that division, and we've seen him knock a lot of people out. Like, he's basically finished everyone that he's fought except for Gastelum, Whitaker, and Adesanya at 185. And here's the thing, guys. Gastelum would have gotten finished by Whitaker if he had that kind of power. And not many people are just able to drop Gastelum. So that's what got him to steal those rounds. He's a good kickboxer. He's got good kickboxing. I know that the middleweight division is not very good skill-wise, being that if you look at athletes, especially in America that are going into the pro leagues, football, and the best athletes in the world, they're around that 6-foot height range, 200, 210 pound range. those are guys that would be fighting at the 185-pound weight class. And it's just that the best athletes, don't go into these sports. So we don't have the creme of the crop at the 185 division like we would in the 135, 145 divisions, right? These smaller guys that wouldn't be able to play football, that wouldn't be able to play basketball, that wouldn't be able to play these other sports. There are phenomenal athletes in Europe and South America that play soccer that are great athletes that could, who knows, be good fighters. You never know. It's just that smaller guys tend to go into martial arts more often, at least in America. And Jared Cannonier is actually pretty damn skilled. What am I getting at, guys? Bringing in all this other talk about why the middleweight division isn't that good? Because Jared Cannonier actually stands out as someone who's pretty damn decent. And Sean Strickland, I believe, just got to the rankings based on his takedown defense. He uses grappling a little bit in the beginning of his career, but that takedown defense is what has really propelled him into the rankings. And his boxing defense as well. But that's really it. He doesn't really know how to check leg kicks. He's not a great kickboxer. And toughness. But who is he facing with significant power that actually has decent skills? That's the thing. You look at Jared Cannonier, skilled, but nothing that's going to wow you. Just a lot of power, of course. But in the middleweight division, that is enough to dominate. That is enough to completely destroy guys, because there aren't many guys that are that highly skilled. And it's a really top-heavy division. Pereira, you have Adesanya, Whitaker, and outside of that, it's like kind of a ghost town. It goes, in my opinion, it goes Pereira, Adesanya, Whitaker, all around the same tier. I might even throw Adesanya below that tier. I think Whitaker is even better than him, at least now. So I'd say Whitaker, right? I'll bring my hands on screen. I'd say Whitaker, Pereira, right there, neck and neck. Adesanya, just a tiny bit lower. Jared Cannonier. And then we have Paulo Costa, Marvin Vettori, Jack Hermanson, these kinds of guys. Dricus, Dricus Duplessis is probably maybe up here. But, Paulo Costa, they're all down here. All right, so it's a big gap. And yeah, I can't wait to see this because it's going to be a stand-up battle. I don't think Sean Strickland's going to go in there and try to take down, the killer gorilla, Jared Cannonier. He's got great takedown defense as well. And, Sean Strickland has good cardio, but I don't think he's going to be able to take these shots. He got knocked out, 5 months ago? A bad knockout, like a really bad knockout from one of the hardest punchers in the UFC, Alex Bahia. And now he's taking on the second hardest puncher in his own division in Jared Cannonier, who's able to deliver it, who's really fast on the feet as well, who's also super tough, who also has a great gas tank. So Sean Strickland, good cardio, tough, but so is Jared Cannonier, good cardio and tough. I'm going to go with the guy who's just a little more crisp and way more powerful, and the one that wasn't KO'd in his last fight. So that's my ultimate prediction. Well, now I'm going to get into the co-main event along with some of the other big fights that are on this card, starting with the lightweight, highly skilled matchup between Damir Ismagulov and Arman Tsarukyan. Arman Tsarukyan still in his mid-20s and Damir Ismagulov in his early 30s, despite looking like a 40-year-old man. I mean, that dude is just built different. And let's be honest, guys, the top of the lightweight rankings, and I'm talking about the upper half of the top 15, like 7 and up to 15, those guys are just better than the guys in the top 7. I am going to take Arman Tsarukyan, Damir Ismagulov, Jalen Turner, guys like Rafael Fiziev over people like RDA, Chandler, Gagey, these long standby names that we've seen for many years now. And, I'll just say it, Arman Tsarukyan's had a tougher resume, a tougher schedule of opponents than Justin Gagey has. Now, of course, Justin Gagey's taken on guys like Dustin Poirier. He's taken on really good fighters like Charles Oliveira. But in general, it's been the Edson Barbozas, the Cowboys, the Michael Chandlers. I'm not convinced that Michael Chandler should even be ranked, to be honest, based on how shitty his fight IQ is. Might have the worst fight IQ in the UFC, despite having one of the best skill sets in the UFC. I mean, really, Michael Chandler is the only guy that, could be a fucking champion for all we know, but also could be not even in the top 20 based on how shitty he is sometimes with that fight IQ. Back to the main subject, Damir Ismagulov. I mean, this guy is basically like a cyborg that just does everything correctly. Some of the best technique in the lightweight division when it comes to the striking. Of course, I mean, he's got phenomenal grappling as well. 24-1. That record should speak for itself. And he's coming off of a big win over Guram Kutateladze. That was a great matchup that we saw at the Texas Fight Night this past summer. And as I've said, these guys are facing killers. They're facing the guys in the top of that top 15 at lightweight. And I feel like that's just going to make them incredible. But they're back at it against another one of them. And one of us. Both of these guys are just itching to get one of those older fighters next, like a Chandler, a Gagey. Who do I have winning this one? Honestly, guys, I don't even have a confident prediction. I'm leaning towards Arman Tsarukyan based on his power and his ability to, go through with some great grappling, some dominant grappling. And I know that Damir Ismagulov has some really good takedown defense, but he hasn't really fought a guy with the level of wrestling of an Arman Tsarukyan. And Arman Tsarukyan is just a big, powerful lightweight. Sure, he's not very tall, but he's a very stocky, well-built lightweight. And if you look at Damir Ismagulov's wins, I mean, goodness gracious, look at his fights so far in the UFC. A win over Yoel Alvarez, a win over Thiago Moises, a win over Rafael Alves, Guram Kutateladze, Alex Georges. That's the one guy I'm not too familiar with, but nonetheless, all decision wins. As I said, he does everything right. Extremely technical, likes to play it safe on the outside, likes to use his length. He has a good reach for the lightweight division as well. And I honestly think that this guy is one of the better technical strikers in the division. It just so happens that he doesn't have a lot of power, whereas a guy like Arman Tsarukyan does pack some heat in his hands. Now, of course, he lost to Mathews, but as far as I'm concerned, that was a win. But the fact that he made it really close against Mathews is also just a tad bit concerning because, to be honest, guys, I don't think that Matheus Gamrot is that great of a striker. I think he's actually pretty overrated because, in my opinion, he's pretty one-dimensional, and I think he was exposed by Beneil Dariush. He either looked really off in that fight, or I think he was exposed based on his striking. Now, I'm not going to be someone that sits here and says that his grappling isn't that impressive because he's failing to have success against a guy like Beneil Dariush, who's also a phenomenal grappler, but man, Matheus Gamrot has some really sloppy striking at times, and he actually had success over Arman Tsarukyan later on in that fight, but that's also because he's got a great gas tank. But nonetheless, I feel like Arman Tsarukyan shouldn't have made it so close in the striking, which gives me a little bit of a pause before making a confident prediction. Nonetheless, I mean, look at these other, I've said nonetheless a lot, look at these other fights that he's had. Yoel Alvarez, a finish over him, he just brutalized him, finished him on the ground. Matt Frivola, Davey Ramos. I mean, he's got some really great wins, and of course, that close fight with Islam Makhachev. Now, I can't wait for this one. I'm just going to enjoy it. Again, I don't really have a firm prediction, but you know what? I might just go with the underdog in Damir Ismagulov because he's just so well-rounded, and I kind of like his takedown defense. I'm going to be honest, guys. I kind of like his takedown defense. 90%. It's pretty good for Damir. Not a lot of people picking Damir, and I think that's also based on the fact that he doesn't have a lot of finishes. But, man, I want to know how good Matheus Gamrot is. That's what I want to know, because he beat Arman Tsarukyan. Even though I think Arman won that fight, he still got the nod. It was still close, and it wasn't a complete robbery either. So I think that this fight is going to tell us how good, both Beneil and Gamrot are, because if Arman Tsarukyan can run through Damir Ismagulov or even finish him, we're looking at a guy that's going to fight for a belt 100%. But I'm also worried that a guy like Arman Tsarukyan's had so many tough fights already this early on in his UFC career, this early on in his life, that if he loses, then it's not looking too good for him, because then you're starting to think, well, he's taking a lot of damage, he's taking a lot of tough opponents. He's got a long road to the title because these guys in the lightweight division are just getting better and better and better. Damir Ismagulov's also in his prime. You know what? I'm going to pick Damir Ismagulov. Fuck it. I'm picking him. He's undefeated in the UFC. I really like his chances. And I don't know if Arman Tsarukyan's going to have much success grappling with the guy, so I'll go with Damir. That's a bold prediction. Drew Dober, Bobby Green. This is going to be the fight of the night. I don't think that Drew Dober is going to beat Bobby Green. He's the favorite, but I don't really understand why he's the favorite. Now, I know he's had some really good finishes. He's got a lot of power. He's got a hell of a chin, but Bobby Green don't need to finish you to dominate you. You know, we've seen it against Rafael Fiziev, and Rafael Fiziev is just one of the best strikers in the UFC, period. Bar none. I mean, that guy is an incredible striker. He's got big power and some of the best Muay Thai techniques that we've seen. And he has big knockout power. Bobby Green's also tough. Bobby Green's also got a chin. And Bobby Green gassed him out and beat the shit out of Rafael Fiziev in the third round. Now, Drew Dober, sure, he's tough as nails. He's got that fire hydrant chin. I mean, the guy's a beast. Big, stocky, lightweight, shredded too. Packs a lot of power in his hands, but is he going to be able to find the target in Bobby Green? I don't think so. I like Bobby Green's chances. I love Bobby Green's Philly shell. I love his unorthodox boxing. He doesn't have the most power, but he can pack some heat in that right hand in which he was able to knock out Ally Quinta with. So you know what? I'm a big fan of Bobby Green. Bobby Green's definitely in my top 10 favorite fighters. He's just so entertaining, and I think a lot of people are forgetting about him since that fight with Islam Makhachev. And I think people are tending to forget because, again, going into that Islam Makhachev fight where he took it on short notice, he was a big star. Like, Bobby Green was the talk of the town in the MMA world at that point in time. Like, the guy was getting a lot of clout, you know, because he had just dominated Nasrat Haqparast. This was after, you know, another really good performance that he had against Rafael Fiziev. And a lot of people were starting to say, holy shit, this Bobby Green guy, like, how come I haven't been a fan of him for as long? I mean, people really started to recognize him, and then he fought Islam and got dominated in the first round, and people just started to forget. And he had that suspension for a little bit. He was suspended because he must have used like a tainted supplement. I don't think he was really using anything. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's using anything, but he seems like the kind of guy to throw around allegations because he's calling a lot of guys sauced up. He said that Fiziev was sauced. He said that Islam Makhachev is sauce. He thinks that people are giving those kids vitamins, steroids at young ages. That's what Bobby Green said in his presser the other day, you know, for Media Week. I don't know. Bobby Green has a lot of weird takes. He's a weird guy, eccentric guy, but I like him. He's entertaining. I just think he's better than Drew Dober. I think he's a much better striker, and I'm confident in this pick, guys. Drew Dober's not finishing Bobby Green, and Bobby Green has a wrestling background. Sure, he got beat up and taken down easily by Islam Makhachev, but that's Islam. We're talking Drew Dober, right? So Bobby Green's going to piece him up for 3 rounds, and I think in the third round it's going to be a wipeout, landslide. So I'm going to go with a 30-27 for my man Bobby Green, maybe 29-28, but either way, he's going to win the second and third round, or at least the first and third. Like, I really believe in Bobby Green, and I think Drew Dober is going to gas. A lot of muscle, lactic acid buildup. I like my chances with Bobby Green. Some of the best boxing, and if you guys want a fight that I guarantee you is going to fucking, you know, be one of the better fights of the night, if not the fight of the night, this is it. So make sure you're watching this. Make sure you have your eyes peeled because Bobby Green's going to put on a show and you're going to be impressed. He's a phenomenal boxer. It's just that he's not the most well-rounded fighter. Again, that wrestling, you don't use it, you kind of lose it. Another fight that I'm excited for is Jake Mathews versus Matthew Semelsberger. I'm really excited for this one because Jake Mathews, you know, he was under the radar for a long time. He was one of the youngest fighters to ever fight in the UFC, but we're looking at an older guy and we thought maybe he's mediocre. Like, he turned out to kind of be that guy who fell off and failed. But his last performance over Andre Fialho at, I believe it was UFC 274, Yuri Prohaska, Glover Teixeira, he put on an absolute clinic over Andre Fialho, and I think he finished him in the first or second round. Showed big power, and it was one of the most impressive performances of the night, and probably his best performance ever. Well, not probably, definitely. And this was Andre Fialho, right? So Andre, going into this fight, had like 4 fights by that time, right? He had 3 knockouts in a row, something crazy like that. Like, there was a lot of hype on him because he was fighting a lot. He was on all the Apex events, and people were picking Andre Fialho to just fuck him up. And Jake Mathews didn't only finish Andre Fialho, but he made Fialho look like he was dog shit. And Jake Mathews just, like, he couldn't be touched. And everything that he threw was landing, like his precision, his timing, his speed. He had power as well. And I'm going to pick Jake Mathews to smoke Mathews Semelsberger. I can't wait to see him fight. I want to see if that was just the one-off performance of his career, or if maybe, he's found a new formula for his style. Said Nurmagomedov and Tsarukyan Karamanov. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce that name. I'm going to go with Said Nurmagomedov. I'm really impressed by this guy. He's got phenomenal skills, great grappling, good submission game, but it's the striking that really impresses me as well. Really, really good kicks. And I'm going to pick Said Nurmagomedov to win this one by decision. So I can't wait for this one. Let's see who else is on the card. Brian Battle. Man, some of these Ultimate Fighter guys are just kind of dog shit. I'm going to be honest. Like, some of these Ultimate Fighter guys, like, I feel like the UFC is only getting guys from the U.S., but the U.S. scene is not that hot right now. And a lot of the good prospects in the U.S. are coming from other sports like wrestling. So, I think Bryce Mitchell's like the last guy that came from the Ultimate Fighter that is really good in the top 10 of a division. That's young, at least. I'm talking about recent Ultimate Fighters. But Brian Battle's nothing special. He's very mediocre. I don't know too much about his opponent. I'm guessing he's going to wrestle. Just look at the motherfucker. He's from Russia, of course. David Dvorak, Manel Kape. I can't wait for this fight. Manel Kape, one of the most entertaining flyweights, got a